Can you imagine what it'd be like to sit at a table about to sign a $700 million contract? We're gonna talk today about these MLB contracts. They've been getting just crazier and crazier. Last year was Ohtani, this year is Soto, and I wanna take a over $700 million contract that someone was just handed a month ago and relate that to our own world, whether it's with regards to a team approach, planning, taxes, all that and more. Mindset with Brad Barrett, let's go. Welcome into Mindset. I'm Brad Barrett. This is producer Jared. I don't know about you, Jared, but it's springtime, baby. And what does that bring up for you?
Flowers.
No! Spring training, man. Come on, get with the program. Hence my bat in my hand. Come on now. Look, we're kind of sports nuts here, being money guys as well. I thought it'd be fitting, given that spring training starting up, to talk about the Juan Soto deal. And not just to talk about it, because I know it's been in the news and you can look it up and read on it. I want to talk about it actually, how it relates to what we can learn in our own lives in planning.
It's very hard to think, for someone like me, when I see those type of dollar bills, I'm basically just thinking like, you're an alien on another planet. You don't exist where I exist. It's hard to think like I can learn something from that.
And these news articles don't make it any better. They're like, signs $750 million. And by the way, this is the same thing on the Ohtani deal, which I spoke about last year, and we're gonna touch on that as well. I want to relate it to all of us, because by no means am I saying me or Jared or any one of you watching, maybe you are, I don't know, have that kind of a contract. Because likely, odds are, probably none of us are gonna be signing a contract like that. I don't know about you.
No.
I mean,
doubtful.
Doubtful.
That's never going to happen. Ever.
Here's the thing. What I want to start off with is it's not about the money. So we have to put the money aside. We're going to talk about the uniquenesses of it. And like I said, we like to geek out on this a little bit. So we're going to go through some of the contract stuff. But I want you to understand value, worth and value. And we're going to talk about that, about your own career, whether you're a business owner watching this or you're a career man or woman watching this, or however you're aligning this thing, and how that relates to understanding value in your own life as well as your own worth, because that's kind of what Soto did. I mean, the Yankees were offering basically the same thing, and he went across town and got it from the Mets, and it had to do with what he placed value on it. So we'll relate that to, currently whether you're watching me here and you're 25 years old or you're watching me here and you're 60 years old, time has a big factor here. So these contracts, if you notice, also have a time factor to them. And it's important as a financial advisor, I want to break this down and relate it to all of us.
And it's just fun talking about $1 billion.
It is. And having a baseball in your hand, baseball bat in your hand, right?
It's
just fun. It's just fun.
Yeah. It's not menacing at all, Brad.
No, not at all.
No.
So, let's get into it. Where do you want to start on this one?
Let's start with the contract.
Okay.
What's he making?
All right. In December, about 2 months ago, Soto agreed to a 15-year, $765 million deal with the Mets. It beats Shohei Ohtani's MLB record for free agent contract, which he signed a year ago for 10 years, $700 million.
Which I never thought I'd see something higher than that for years to come.
I don't think anyone did.
Yeah.
Now, according to Forbes, this is the largest contract in the history of any of the top 4 professional sports. Quick breakdown for you, payout per year. This is gonna matter because I wanna relate this to Ohtani and then relate this all to us. Signing bonus, $75 million. Once the ink dried, he received a $75 million wire, probably, check, I don't know. That's what happened.
How good does that feel? Just
probably pretty good.
Oof.
Probably pretty good. I don't know about you, but that's probably larger than most gross domestic productions of some countries.
Oh yeah. In fact, the country with the smallest GDP in the world is a little island nation called Tuvalu. Hope I'm pronouncing that right, with 79 million.
Ooh.
So his signature got him what that country makes in a year.
Big number, but a little bit more relatable than 700 billion.
75 million more relatable?
You're right. So
good for you.
Upon the ink drying on this, he received $75 million. This year, 2025, his income was $46.8 million. It'll be the same in 26. Then in 27, goes down to 42.5, and then 28 and 29, it's 46.8 each year. And then from 2030 to 2039, it's $46 million per year. That's his contract.
And what's crazy is there's even more. He's got award bonuses in his deal.
Yeah, as most athletes do, but yeah.
$500,000 for an MVP. All-star appearance is $100,000. Golden Glove, $100,000. All these things, if he basically just racks up best of everything in there, it comes around to $1.7 million a year. So if you look at that over the 15-year contract, his total, if he just balls out for that whole time and actually earns that money, he's going to be pulling in just about $1 billion.
We're going to get $1 billion. Trust and believe that.
It's close to $1 billion.
A billion with a B.
Billion with a B.
And $1 billion, we hear billion, but what's a billion?
9 zeros.
I have some fun facts. 1 billion $1 bills could cover an area of 4 square miles. Let's see, what's some other fun ones? If the average price of a house is $525,000, then $1 billion could buy about 1,900 houses.
Holy
He
cow.
could easily buy
Almost
a small
2,000
city.
houses. He can basically own a city.
Amount of time needed to save $1 billion based on median U.S. annual income of $68,000, you would need 14,810 years to save what he got in his contract.
At 0% interest rate, I'm assuming. Let's just put aside.
Just put aside.
And look, all the facts aside with his contract, the first key point takeaway for today is whether you're Juan Soto, Shohei Ohtani, or anybody else, having a team around you matters. I mean, do you really think he did this deal by himself? Do you really think he understood the deal between, how to value it between the Yankees and the Mets? No, he had accountants, he had managers, he had agents, he had financial advisors. But the idea is it's important for all of us to not think like, oh, he needs that because it's $1 billion contract, or oh, he needs that because he's, a main person or an athlete or whatever else. No, all of us should have that. Every single one of us should have a team approach. Yes, I don't care if you're making $100,000 a year, you got a $200,000 mortgage on a $500,000 house, you got 2 kids and maybe 2 incomes. Yeah, you should have a financial advisor. You should have an accountant. You should have a person that understands your life insurance. You should have a person that one time at least understand your estate planning. That's a team. And don't overthink it. Don't think, well, I'm not going to have that much money. I don't need that. Yes, you do. You deserve it. You deserve it. You're working hard. Okay, you deserve to have a team approach around you. That's what we do for our clients.
Because I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
The second one is, and the biggest one, is this concept of present value and future value. I think especially in the past couple of years with interest rates going up and all this inflation talk, this could not be more of a better time to talk about and use this as a backdrop, these deals, to talk about net present value and future value. Now, Soto broke basically Ohtani's record from a year ago, and I want to relate the two because I think it's really important for us, common folk, myself included, to understand how we relate something like these into proper planning, an individualistic and tailored approach. Ohtani's deal, in high-level form, was 10 years, so 5 years less than Soto's, and $700 million, so $50 million less. Now, if you were just to stop there and stop reading the headlines, you would say, okay, guy signed for 10 years, $750 million. Again, all these numbers were right? And Ohtani did 10 years, $700 million. So, 5 years less, maybe a little bit more or less per year if you want to, account for it that way, and maybe $15 million less in the contract.
Ohtani's actually looks from, even a little bit better.
Okay. Now, what's staggering about Ohtani's contract that I want to bring up is it includes $680 million. So 680 of the $700 million deal is in deferred money. For the first 10 years, basically until 2034, he's going to be receiving $2 million a year. And then for the 10 years after that, it's $68 million. Very different than Soto's deal. The biggest thing I want to share for you all is $1 million today isn't necessarily $1 million 10 years from now. Relative to today's dollars, given what we've seen in inflation, it won't go as far as it does today. You don't have to be an athlete to need this concept. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, looking at maybe selling a business, understanding the value of that sale, of an installment sale or things like that is really important. If you're someone who's worked for 30, 35 years and understanding how your 401k is going to pay you and how Social Security is going to come in and understanding those payments tomorrow and how they relate to today's dollars, it's important. But it is a difficult math, and it's a difficult calculation. And so I thought we'd have some fun with this and make sure that let's break down the Ohtani deal in particular because of the deferment of it. Let's break it down. And to do that, I want to bring on my good friend, Pat Bowen. He's the president of our firm here at One Capital Management, my business partner, and I thought it'd be, and a fellow baseball nut. So I wanted to bring this up for us all and have this conversation. So Pat, welcome on.
Thanks, Brad. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you, man. As a friend of the show, and we talk about these kind of things, internally all the time. We're talking about the Juan Soto, the Ohtani, these contracts. I know you're a baseball nut on this kind of stuff. Help us understand net present value and how we as advisors would look at a contract like this, and how a client or anyone watching, whether it's a subscriber or someone even into baseball or into money, anything, how they would look at a contract like this.
It's a great question. And, Brad, with baseball, with our baseball team, same with hockey, we've got some NBA players and some NFL players. We always let them know, and their agents know, when you're going into a negotiation, have us as your resource. And we've actually got examples, in particular in baseball. It broke my heart, but one of our former Giant players signed in Boston, and it was our guy who gave him the advice and said, for the difference in money in the contract, on the face value of the contract, you're better off in Boston because the California taxes are significantly higher. And lo and behold, he left San Francisco and broke a lot of Giants fans' hearts. But to get to net present value, when you start to think about, well, what is it actually worth in today's dollars? I guess the best concept to start with is think of inflation to start. I'm going to go back to when I was a kid, and I'm just going to use this as an example. I could buy a pack of baseball cards that had 10 or 15 or 20 cards and a stick of gum that was rock hard, fell apart, repositioned itself, and became a piece of gum that lasted for about 45 seconds. And then it was just like chewing on rocks and had terrible flavor.
Yeah.
But it was the baseball cards that mattered. So those cards that I was buying at the shortstop when I was a kid, that was the name of a 7-Eleven type store back where I grew up. I'd buy the pack of cards and see what I got, but that cost $0.25. Today, that pack of cards is probably $2 at Target or 7-Eleven. So that right there is an example of inflation. The price of things goes up over time.
Yep.
So now think about it. If I got $1 today, this was 1976, I could buy 4 packs of baseball cards, and I might get the rookie card for Ricky Henderson, which would be worth a lot one day.
Yeah.
If I go today with that same dollar, I can't even get 1 pack of cards. So $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow if you have a comfort level that things are going to go up in price over time, which they have for the last 5,000 years. Yep. So there's the concept, which, by the way, the concept of net present value, actually, if you look back in time, actually came about 5,000 years ago or so. This was actually written about. Present value and future value and yield, return. So this present value notion is $1 today, I can buy more than I can with that same dollar in the future. So that Shohei, who's going to be getting $2 million a year for the first 10 years of his deal, and $68 million once he's, let's say, presumably retired. When the actual playing part of the contract is over, he's getting $68 million a year for 10 years. Well, the $68 million in the future isn't going to buy what $68 million would buy today. By the way, that's not to say that's a bad deal for Shohei. I think we all the dollar amounts here make it all kind of an absurd discussion or argument or debate, but it's kind of fun to do.
It is, and Jared and I were kind of going through this. I mean, we're talking about $68 million or $700 million in total. I mean, these numbers are a little staggering, and we're trying to bring it down to a level of every one of us needs to understand net present value and $1 today versus $1 tomorrow, whether you are 30 years old watching this and you got 30 years left in your career, understanding the time value of money and the net present value of $1 today and $1 tomorrow. I don't care. None of us, I don't think we all can say this, none of us are signing a $700 million deal today. So this probably doesn't pertain to us. But what you're talking about in these net present values, and that's what I want to go into. Speaking of Ohtani, right? That deal, the $2 million for the 10 years, we talked a lot about on the show about it being deferred. So walk me through, Pat, I think for everybody here, walk me through how you would look at a net present value speaking of Ohtani, walk me through this $2 million, like at time of signing, if you will, like when he signed this deal December of 23, so a little over a year ago, right? The contract value that we read, right? Everyone read this news report and it was kind of like wide news for a while. And at the time, right, it was the largest free agent contract until Soto's deal, okay? We're reading $2 million a year. Now, the layman's will just say, oh my gosh, $2 million a year. They'll kind of forget taxes and they'll forget net present value. Walk us through that first 10 years as you would see it, and then maybe walk through the latter 10 years when he's receiving the $68 million. Like, how would we receive this? And ultimately getting to what is $700 million that we would see as a reading article actually worth today?
Okay. So remember the concept we talked about with inflation, and a dollar today is worth more than a dollar tomorrow. We actually have to look out at the dollar that you earn, or the $2 million you earn in 2025 or then 2026. And we just use in our case, we would use a risk-free investment, call it a 10-year treasury. We could use a risk-free investment and just say, well, if I invested my money without taking any other risk, U.S. government treasury bond, we'll leave the arguments whether that's got zero risk whatsoever out of this conversation. And what would I earn on that? Now, if you receive that dollar in the future, you didn't earn all that. So let's discount the value of that dollar back, or that $2 million back to today. So, this year's contract, starting in April when they actually start getting paid for this season,
right,
and it goes through the season, is $1.8 million. It's actually not $2 million. Now, the checks will total $2 million, but the value relative to 2 years ago, roughly when he signed that contract, is only $1.8 million.
I want to flash forward because I want to keep this notion with the present value here. I want to flash forward to 2034, if that's okay. The first year of his $68 million. Because I think the delta, the difference here of what we read as $68 million versus what the actual net present value of that is a much wider marker. And I think this will start having people have the rubber meet the road here on this. Walk us through how you would evaluate that latter 10 years in today's dollars.
So it just using the same method for calculating the net present value, and I think you've seen this, but the net present value is actually just slightly under $40 million. So $68 million that they're going to wire to Shohei in 2034 in today's dollars at just that 5% discount rate is just a little bit less than $40 million in value today. That's $28 million of delta.
I want to bring this to a head for a second, Pat. All said and done, between 2024 and the end of this contract, which technically, if I'm not mistaken, is 2043, I'm speaking of Ohtani, right?
You're right.
A $700 million deal that we read, I'm like, oh my gosh, right? Technically, what, if you were to value that deal, Pat, without going into the weeds on it, we kind of went through the minutia of it a little bit. What is $700 million contract value at time of signing actually worth?
So that present value, when he wrote his name on that piece of paper, was about $338 million. Not 700, 338.
Say no more. The idea of investing that money, understanding the contract. This also is somewhat true of, you have to discount cash flows, even though we talked about Soto's deal, which he's getting paid almost $50 million for the first little while. You still got to kind of do the same thing, but you can see there's a value difference here and a proposition. And look, I think that's kind of a beautiful thing for us to kind of end on there. And as always, Pat, I do appreciate you coming on, and we're going to have more of Pat for many, many things. So thanks for the time on this one, Pat. Anything else you want to say on the Ohtani?
One thing to think about is, okay, why would the Dodgers do that deal? It's good for them to kick the can down the road, pay later, right? Because they can add a bunch of other players. They don't hit the luxury tax and all those things. I actually did get the information for you, just for fun.
Oh, God.
The amount of money the Dodgers have in deferred contracts right now, starting as of the 2025 season. And it includes Mookie Betts, Blake Snell they just signed from the Giants, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, etc. The total amount, $1.375 billion. That is going to be paid out sometime between, starting in a couple of years because it's deferred, but some of them are shorter deferrals, all the way to like 2043 or something like that.
That is a staggering number. And I will say, and we'll end on this, I would say from a Dodgers perspective, they got, at the time, a two-way. I mean, he was the first pitcher-batter guy since Babe Ruth, right? I mean, he wasn't doing much pitching, but the point is, his bat was insane, right? But the reality is, they won the World Series with it, and they got a guy at a huge discount. Yes, they got a huge payload at the end, but presumably they're making some good investments on their own and getting their franchise up and selling jerseys and doing all the stuff to be able to pay that tag later. But Pat,
TV deals.
You're the man. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
All right, I'm looking forward to it. We're going to examine that contract and see what it's really worth today.
All right, we're gonna hold you to it. Come back with the numbers.
All right, I got you.
All right, see ya.
Thanks.
So as you can see, we broke down, hopefully, in a digestible format. Did that make some sense to you?
It does. It makes a lot more sense when you're seeing it kind of explained out, laying out the numbers a little bit. Yeah.
It's inflation, it's present value, future value. It's a lot of concepts all in one. And with that, I want to now bring it home. Baseball intended. We're rounding third base. Let's go home. Time value of money, which is a subsect of the net present value idea, is really important for all of us to understand. And to do that, I want to show you something that I think is really important for all of you as you're looking to build your wealth and on this wealth building journey. So take a look here for a second. This is, again, talking about the concept of time. So mainly there's 4 components you need to care about. How many years you're talking about. There's the interest rate per year. This is our main assumption we have to make. I always put in 5% just to be conservative, like it's a 5% rate of return each and every year. The present value is the other one, where you're starting from. So if you're 25 starting with 0, start there. And ultimately, you're solving for, the fourth one is how much you're putting in per year. Those are your 4 inputs to ultimately get you the future value. So let me give you an example. All right, starting periods, let's say you're, in my example, 25 years old, you want to retire at 65. And by the way, whether you're 30, 40, 50 watching this, you can run the same numbers, just put in your years. So in this case, we got 40 years going. Again, I want to use a very conservative rate of 5%. Present value, I'm assuming you're starting right now, 0. And I'm assuming we're going to put, let's just choose $10,000 a year in there, okay? If we do that, what we see here is over the next 40 years, if you earn 5% on average each year, you start with 0 right now, and you put in $10,000 every year, you'll have a $1.2 million future value. What's really cool about this is you can run the amortization. Watch this. See the first 15 years, you can see of $10,000 going in, the first 15 years, you got $195,000 put into this, right? And the future value of that at that time is $215,000. You're kind of going like, that's not a whole lot. But you did it. I'm saying this because this is where most people give up. This is most people like, oh, investing's hard, or now I'm 40 years old and I got other stuff going on and I'm not doing it, or oh my gosh, I want to go into some other asset class because everyone's talking about it on social media and that's what's going to get me there. No, watch this. At 15 years, it took you a while to get to 200,000 or so and change, but look what happens the next 15 years. By the next 15 years, you go to year 30, you're at $664,000. So it took you 15 years to get to 200, and in the next 15 years, you 3 times that. This, my friends, if you look at this abstractly, I'm a nerd with numbers, this is compound interest lived out. You see what I'm saying here? If you stopped at year 15, you would say, man, I put $195,000 in, it's only worth $215, like, what gives, right? You haven't let the compound interest work for you. It is a long game. I know it's not the sexiest thing in the world, but it's so important. And this is why I advocate on this, because whether you're doing a deal for an MLB contract or you're doing your own 401k contributions here, you can see how much this matters. Time will always matter. Everything happens on the back end of compound interest. This, my friends, is why compound interest is always going to be the most important thing and why time matters for every one of us. And hey, look, we may not have a nearly $800 million contract on our table, okay? But what we do have and what you have worked for, we want to hold on to. And more than that, we want to be good stewards of that and understand where it's going. So these concepts, although mathematically, and I might have lost some of you early on, but these are really, really cool things to learn and to at least have a decent working knowledge of it, so that when you talk with your advisor or you reach out to a couple and you're interviewing them for your own family, you at least know a basis of what you're going for and why it's important to you. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree wholeheartedly. Very important.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that today as much as we did. We really like going through these sports contracts and trying to relate it to our own world. But as always, please share the love if you don't mind. Subscribe, share this to someone that you care about. If you'd like to show, or if you don't like to show, share it as well. I don't know. Comment on it. Let us know what you think. And next week we're gonna be talking about
how your emotions affect your investing.
Ooh.
Can't wait for that one.
As you guys know, I'm a huge fan of psychology and the behavioral aspects of this, so I'm excited for that one. So stay tuned for next week. And as always, if you lead with love, everything's gonna be okay. See you next week.